Have you noticed? More and more men are quietly stepping back from women, from relationships, from the very chase that once defined masculinity. It's not anger, it's not hate, it's something deeper. Men are starting to value themselves differently, and today we're going to uncover exactly why men are walking away from women. Respect is the foundation of every meaningful connection. Without it, love cannot survive, trust cannot grow, and intimacy cannot sustain itself. For a man, respect is not just about words. It is about how he is seen, valued, and treated in everyday interactions. When a man feels respected, he thrives. He gives more, he sacrifices more, and he becomes the strongest version of himself for the woman he loves. But when that respect is lost, something inside him begins to shut down. He no longer feels the drive to stay, to fight, or to give endlessly because he realizes that no matter what he does, it will never be enough. And that realization is the very point where men begin to walk away. Men are walking away because they are tired of being dismissed and belittled. In many relationships today, instead of appreciation, what they often receive is criticism. Instead of acknowledgement for their efforts, they are met with constant comparisons. A man may work tirelessly to provide, to protect, to stand strong, but if all he hears is what he hasn't done or what he should have done better, slowly his spirit begins to fade. He starts questioning why he should invest his energy in a space where nothing he gives is seen as valuable. The truth is, men crave respect in the same way women crave love, but in modern dynamics, respect is often withheld, while demands keep increasing. This imbalance is one of the biggest reasons men no longer find fulfillment in certain relationships. Disrespect doesn't always come in loud arguments or harsh words. It can come in subtle ways. The rolling of eyes when he speaks, the lack of gratitude when he provides, the dismissive tone when he shares his feelings, or the public shaming disguised as a joke. These small acts may seem insignificant in the moment, but for a man, they cut deep. Every time he is dismissed, ignored, or mocked, he feels a piece of his masculinity being stripped away. Men are not walking away because they are weak. They are walking away because they are tired of fighting invisible battles for validation in spaces where respect is no longer present. Respect for men is not about blind obedience or superiority. It is about recognition. It is about acknowledging the effort, the sacrifices, the risks, and the quiet strength they bring. When a man feels that his role is constantly undermined, he begins to retreat into silence. He no longer argues. He no longer defends himself. He no longer tries to prove his worth. Silence becomes his answer, and eventually that silence turns into distance. Men have learned that instead of staying in environments where they are treated as less than, it is better to walk away entirely. Another layer to this loss of respect comes from societal narratives. Men today are often portrayed as disposable, replaceable, or inherently flawed. They are told that masculinity is toxic, that their natural instincts to lead, to protect, or to provide are oppressive. In such an environment, respect is not only withdrawn at the individual level, but also at the cultural level. This constant attack on their identity makes men question why they should continue to give when everything they represent is viewed as problematic. Slowly, they begin to distance themselves from relationships that make them feel like they are always the villain, never the hero. For men, respect is deeply tied to their sense of identity. A man who is respected feels powerful, capable, and willing to give his all. A man who is disrespected feels drained, diminished, and disconnected. He may love deeply, but love without respect becomes unbearable. And so he chooses to protect what little strength he has left by walking away from the person, the relationship, or even the environment where he feels unseen. One of the biggest reasons men are walking away today is because they have started to value emotional peace more than anything else. A man who once tolerated unnecessary arguments, constant fights, and emotional games has begun to realize that his mental state is too important to sacrifice. Peace of mind has become the highest form of wealth, and many men have learned that drama, no matter how passionate or thrilling it may appear at first, eventually drains their spirit. They are learning that no relationship is worth the constant cycle of tension and release, arguments and apologies, chaos and calm. Men are beginning to understand that the cost of drama is their energy, and that energy is something they refuse to keep spending on things that don't bring them fulfillment. Drama in relationships often comes disguised as intensity, but it is rarely sustainable. It might be the constant testing of boundaries, the need to provoke reactions, or the habit of creating problems just to feel excitement. For some women, drama becomes a way of maintaining control or reassurance, but for men, it becomes exhausting. What once may have felt like passion quickly turns into a burden. Men are not walking away because they cannot handle challenges. They are walking away because they are learning the difference between healthy challenges that build a bond and toxic cycles that destroy it. There is a difference between working through difficulties together and creating chaos for no reason, and men are becoming more aware of this distinction. Emotional drama does not only come from arguments or fights, it can manifest in silent treatments, guilt tripping, or emotional manipulation. It is the endless push and pull, the constant need to prove loyalty, the subtle games designed to keep a man on edge. Over time, this erodes his peace, making him feel like he is never safe, never stable, never enough. Men crave stability, not because they are boring, but because stability is the soil where love truly grows. If every day feels like a battlefield, if every word can be twisted, if every action is doubted, the man begins to ask himself why he should remain in an environment that constantly robs him of peace. And the answer he often finds is to walk away. For men, peace is not about avoiding responsibility or escaping commitment. It is about protecting their emotional balance. A man may be willing to sacrifice his time, his money, and his effort, but the one thing he cannot afford to lose is his inner calm. When he comes home from a world that already demands so much from him, the last thing he wants is to step into another storm. He is not looking for constant conflict. He is looking for refuge. He wants his relationship to be a place of comfort, not another battlefield. When that refuge is missing, when instead of calm he finds more chaos, he makes a choice to leave. This shift towards valuing peace is not weakness, it is wisdom. Men are realizing that a peaceful mind gives them clarity, energy, and strength. Without peace, even the strongest man becomes fragile, drained, and disconnected. And so they choose solitude over toxic company, silence over endless arguments, and emotional balance over emotional chaos. They are not rejecting love, they are rejecting drama because they know that real love should bring peace, not destroy it. One of the strongest reasons men are walking away is because of the changing standards that no longer feel rooted in genuine connection. In past generations, relationships were built on partnership, loyalty, and shared values. A man's worth was measured by his character, his integrity, and his willingness to protect and provide for his family. But today, the standards have shifted into something far more materialistic and transactional. Many men feel that they are no longer valued for who they are, but for what they can offer in terms of money, status, lifestyle, or external appearances. And when love becomes conditional upon these things, it stops feeling like love at all. It starts to feel like a business deal where the man is constantly tested, compared, and judged rather than genuinely accepted. The modern culture of social media has fueled this change in standards even further. Men are bombarded with images of luxury lifestyles, extravagant dates, and highlight reels of relationships that look more like advertisements than real connections. Women are often encouraged, directly or indirectly, to set their expectations based on what they see online rather than what they truly need in a partner. The result is that many men feel they are not competing for love anymore. They are competing for approval, trying to meet unrealistic checklists that keep growing with time. Instead of being seen as individuals with flaws, struggles, and strengths, they feel like they are constantly auditioning for a role they can never fully play. This constant pressure becomes unbearable, and walking away starts to look like the only way to reclaim their dignity. It is not that men are unwilling to provide or to give. In fact, many men naturally want to protect, support, and uplift their partners. But when these efforts are never enough, when the standard is always just a little higher, when there is always something missing, the man begins to shut down emotionally. He feels unworthy, not because he lacks value, but because the standards set before him are designed in such a way that no matter what he gives, it is never complete. And eventually he decides that it is better to invest his energy elsewhere, into his career, his passions, his health, or even his solitude, than to remain in a cycle where he feels constantly inadequate. These changing standards have also blurred the line between wants and needs. A man may not hesitate to fulfill genuine needs, security, stability, care, and love, but when wants turn into endless demands, the relationship loses its balance. He begins to question whether he is truly loved for who he is, or merely tolerated for what he can provide. The painful truth is that many men feel they are no longer chosen for their soul, their character, or their heart, but only for their utility. This realization is what drives them away, because no man wants to feel like a transaction in the life of someone he loves. The greatest tragedy in these shifting standards is that they take away the essence of partnership. Relationships were once about building together, about growing side by side through struggles and victories. Now, too often, they are about measuring who brings more, who gives more, who achieves more. Instead of nurturing love, this competitive standard creates distance. And when a man no longer sees a place where he can simply be himself and still be enough, he chooses to step back, because deep down he knows that love without acceptance is not love at all. There was a time when men would sacrifice everything just to be chosen, just to be accepted, just to feel that they were worthy of a woman's love. They were taught that their value came from how much they could provide, how much they could endure, and how far they could go to prove themselves. But slowly, a shift has started to take place. Men are waking up to the realization that their worth does not come from constant validation, from endless chasing, or from begging for attention. They are beginning to understand that self-worth is not something that someone else gives them. It is something they must own, protect, and refuse to compromise on. And this awakening is causing many men to walk away from relationships where their value is constantly questioned or diminished. When a man realizes his own worth, he no longer entertains spaces where he is treated as if he is disposable. He no longer invests his time in people who only value him when he is useful. This awakening comes with a deep internal shift. It is the moment he understands that love should not mean losing himself. It is the moment he realizes that being a man does not mean sacrificing his identity, his dreams, and his peace of mind just to keep someone else satisfied. Men are recognizing that their worth is not tied to how much they can give away, but how much they choose to protect within themselves. This self-awareness is empowering them to step back from relationships that drain them and step into a life where they feel whole, even in solitude. For generations, men were conditioned to prove themselves through external achievements, to show their value by what they could provide or how much they could endure in silence. But this awakening is teaching them that worth is internal. A man's value is not determined by how many times he is chosen, but by how firmly he chooses himself. The power of walking away does not come from indifference, it comes from self-respect. When a man awakens to his worth, he no longer tolerates disrespect, manipulation, or neglect. He sees them not as tests of strength, but as signs that he deserves better. And in this moment of clarity, he begins to detach from relationships that make him question his value because he no longer needs anyone to prove it for him. This awakening is also changing the way men approach love. They are no longer willing to chase endlessly for crumbs of affection because they have discovered that their time and energy are priceless. They would rather invest in their growth, their health, their passions, and their future than spend their lives trying to earn love from someone who withholds it as a form of control. Self-worth has given men the courage to prioritize themselves, and in doing so, they are finding a new kind of strength, a strength that comes not from domination or sacrifice, but from knowing they are enough as they are. This new awareness does not mean that men are abandoning love altogether. It means they are redefining it. They are learning that real love cannot exist without mutual respect, appreciation, and acceptance. And if those things are missing, they no longer see a reason to stay. They are learning that walking away is not a failure, but a declaration of self-worth. It is the moment they stop asking for permission to be valued and start living in a way that honors their own value. This awakening is reshaping how men see themselves, and with it, how they move in and out of relationships that no longer align with the man they are becoming. One of the biggest changes men are struggling with today is the dramatic shift in gender roles. For generations, men and women entered relationships with a clear sense of balance. Men were expected to protect and provide. Women were expected to nurture and support. These roles were not perfect, but they created a sense of complementarity where both sides contributed something unique to the relationship. Today, however, those roles have been disrupted. As society has evolved, the lines between masculine and feminine responsibilities have blurred, and instead of harmony, what many men feel is conflict. The partnership that once relied on mutual dependence has, in many cases, turned into competition, where both sides are trying to prove they don't need each other. This shift has left many men questioning their place in relationships. They are told to be strong, yet criticized for being too dominant. They are encouraged to show emotion, yet mocked when they appear too vulnerable. They are expected to provide, yet told that providing is oppressive and outdated. The result is confusion, a man who no longer knows what role he is supposed to play. When he leads, he is accused of controlling. When he steps back, he is accused of being weak. When he provides, it is taken for granted. When he doesn't, he is seen as inadequate. This constant double bind leaves men exhausted because no matter what they do, they are wrong. Over time, the exhaustion transforms into detachment and detachment into walking away. What men desire is not the return of rigid traditions, but balance. They want to feel that their strengths as men are valued, not attacked. They want to feel that their natural instincts to protect, to build, to provide are seen as contributions, not threats. But too often, relationships today are framed as power struggles rather than partnerships. Men find themselves in dynamics where instead of cooperation, there is competition, where success is not measured by how well the relationship thrives, but by who holds more control. And in that constant tug of war, men begin to lose interest because they know that love cannot grow in the soil of rivalry. Another part of this shifting dynamic is the way masculinity itself has been redefined. For centuries, men were raised to believe that strength was their primary duty, but modern narratives often dismiss that strength as toxic while demanding emotional vulnerability from men who were never taught how to navigate it. The problem is not that men don't want to change, they do. The problem is that the standards keep shifting so rapidly that no matter how much a man adapts, it feels like the goalpost is always moving. He is asked to be both traditional and modern at the same time, both strong and soft, both provider and equal sharer, both leader and follower. The contradiction is impossible to maintain, and the weight of trying to do so pushes men away. This constant redefinition of roles also creates insecurity in men about whether they are even needed. If women can provide for themselves, protect themselves, and build independent lives, what role is left for a man? Instead of being celebrated as partners, many men feel reduced to accessories, optional additions rather than essential pillars of a shared life. And when a man begins to feel like he is not needed, only tolerated, he withdraws. Because the essence of masculinity has always been tied to purpose, and when a man feels purposeless in a relationship, the relationship loses meaning for him. The shift in gender roles was meant to create equality, but in many cases it has created imbalance. Men are not afraid of equality, they welcome it, but they fear relationships that feel like battlegrounds instead of sanctuaries. They want to build together, not compete. They want a balance where their masculinity is not shamed but respected, where their role is not erased but honored. And when they no longer find that balance, when every step they take feels like the wrong one, they choose to walk away from the chaos of shifting roles and toward a life where they no longer have to question their value every single day. Another powerful reason men are walking away from women today is because they have discovered better alternatives. Unlike the generations before them, men no longer feel that their identity, purpose, or happiness has to be tied exclusively to a relationship. For a long time, men were conditioned to believe that their ultimate value came from being a provider for a woman, a husband, or a father. Their success was measured by how well they could serve their family. But now, many men are realizing that there are countless other paths to fulfillment, paths that do not require them to sacrifice their peace, their freedom, or their identity in relationships that no longer nourish them. One of these alternatives is self-development. Men today have access to more resources than ever before. Books, mentors, communities, and entire movements that focus on building physical strength, financial independence, and mental resilience. Instead of spending their energy chasing validation from women who may not appreciate them, men are channeling that energy into building themselves. They are focusing on their fitness, their health, their businesses, their passions. The satisfaction of progress, of setting goals and achieving them, has become a stronger motivator than the unstable highs and lows of relationships filled with conflict and disrespect. This focus on self-mastery is giving men a sense of pride and fulfillment that many relationships fail to provide. Brotherhood has also become a powerful alternative. Men are finding deeper bonds with other men who share their struggles, their ambitions, and their mindset. Communities of like-minded men are rising, both online and offline, where they support each other, hold each other accountable, and grow together. In these spaces, men feel respected, understood, and valued in ways they often do not feel in their relationships. This brotherhood replaces the constant criticism and emotional games with encouragement and clarity. For many men, the loyalty and respect they find in these bonds far outweigh the instability they experience with women who do not see or appreciate their worth. Another alternative that men are embracing is solitude. For centuries, being alone was seen as a weakness, as if a man without a partner was incomplete. But now, men are learning that solitude is power. Time alone allows them to reflect, to heal, to pursue passions, and to live without compromise. The peace of not having to explain themselves, not having to endure unnecessary arguments, not having to prove their worth over and over again, this peace is addictive. Solitude no longer feels like loneliness, it feels like freedom. And once a man tastes that freedom, it becomes very difficult for him to go back to a life where his energy is constantly drained by drama or unrealistic expectations. Men are also finding alternatives in purpose-driven living. They are pursuing careers, missions, and goals that give them a deeper sense of meaning than any unstable relationship ever could. Whether it's building businesses, traveling, creating art, or contributing to causes they believe in, they are realizing that fulfillment can be found in the pursuit of purpose. Purpose does not criticize, it does not manipulate, it does not drain, it rewards. And the rewards of pursuing purpose are far greater and more sustainable than the fleeting rewards of seeking validation in unhealthy relationships. Technology has also widened these alternatives. Men are exposed to ideas, lifestyles, and opportunities that previous generations never imagined. They can learn new skills, build online businesses, travel the world, or connect with communities that give them meaning. With such opportunities available, why would they confine themselves to relationships where they are constantly made to feel unworthy? The abundance of alternatives makes staying in draining dynamics feel unnecessary. Men no longer feel trapped, they feel empowered to choose a different path. This rise of alternatives is not about men rejecting women altogether. It is about men refusing to settle for less than what they deserve. When they see that they can build fulfilling lives through self-growth, brotherhood, solitude, and purpose, they are no longer willing to endure environments where their efforts go unappreciated. Instead of tolerating relationships that make them feel smaller, they are investing their time into alternatives that make them grow stronger. When men walk away from women today, it is not always an act of rejection. More often, it is an act of redirection. They are not simply leaving someone behind, they are moving towards something greater, something that allows them to grow beyond the limitations of relationships that drain them. Growth has become the silent priority for men, and they are beginning to understand that sometimes the path to becoming their best self requires stepping away from environments where they are not valued. This walking away is not rooted in bitterness, it is rooted in the desire to evolve, to rise, and to live a life of higher purpose. Growth requires space. A man cannot truly grow when he is constantly entangled in cycles of disrespect, emotional chaos, or unrealistic demands. These cycles consume his time, his energy, and his focus, leaving little room for him to pursue his passions, his health, his career, or his inner development. By walking away, men reclaim that space. They give themselves permission to redirect their energy toward building the life they want instead of trying to fix relationships that refuse to change. This choice to prioritize growth over stagnation is what separates the man who stays stuck in toxic cycles from the man who transforms himself into someone stronger and more complete. Walking towards growth often begins with self-reflection. When men step away from unhealthy dynamics, they are forced to face themselves, who they are, what they want, and what they need to change. This reflection becomes the foundation of growth. They begin to invest in their mental health, their physical strength, their financial independence, and their spiritual clarity. The very energy that was once wasted on arguments, games, or chasing validation is now channeled into transformation. Slowly, the man who once felt drained begins to feel powerful again, not because someone else validates him, but because he validates himself. Growth also means expansion. Men are learning new skills, exploring new passions, and discovering parts of themselves they never had the time to develop while they were trapped in draining relationships. They are traveling, building businesses, connecting with mentors, and surrounding themselves with communities that challenge and uplift them. Every step they take away from what no longer serves them becomes a step toward unlocking a new version of themselves. And as they expand, they begin to see that walking away was not about losing someone, it was about finding themselves. Another aspect of walking towards growth is the pursuit of purpose. Men are realizing that without purpose, life feels empty no matter who stands beside them. Purpose gives direction, meaning, and strength. It anchors them when everything else feels unstable. By walking away from women or relationships that distract them from their mission, men are choosing to protect their purpose above all else. They are discovering that true fulfillment comes not from constant approval, but from alignment with their calling. This sense of mission becomes the driving force behind their growth, pulling them toward a life that feels complete on its own. Walking towards growth also means emotional maturity. Men are learning to set boundaries, to recognize red flags, and to protect their peace without guilt. They are becoming more selective about who they allow into their lives because they understand that not everyone deserves access to their time or energy. This maturity does not make them cold, it makes them wiser. They no longer seek to be everything for everyone. Instead, they focus on becoming the best version of themselves, knowing that the right connections will naturally align with the growth they are creating. In walking towards growth, men are proving to themselves that they are not defined by who accepts or rejects them. They are defined by the strength of their evolution, by their ability to rise beyond the limitations placed on them, and by their courage to choose themselves when no one else will. Men are not walking away out of hate, bitterness, or weakness. They are walking away because they are finally choosing themselves. They are walking away from disrespect, from drama, from unrealistic standards that drain their spirit. They are walking away because they have awakened to their self-worth, because the shifting roles no longer give them balance, because they see better alternatives that bring peace, purpose, and strength. Most importantly, they are walking away not just from women, but towards growth, towards becoming men who know their value, who honor their peace, and who refuse to settle for less than what they deserve. This movement is not the end of relationships. It is the beginning of a new standard, a standard where men no longer sacrifice themselves just to be accepted, but instead demand respect, peace, balance, and growth as the foundation of love. And until that foundation is honored, more men will continue to walk away, not to escape, but to evolve.